So, what's up people and welcome to the Mission 119 discussion of Spy Family. So Mission 119 came out a while back, and as always I will leave a link to this mission that's currently being shown on the publisher's official website, Manga Plus, for free to the North American audience. So if you're interested, we'll go take a look at it before they pull this mission back. Now before I begin, I do want to apologize. I do have hay fever allergies at this time, and with all the flowers blooming, it's hitting me pretty hard. So if I sound even worse than I usually do, it's because of that. If it's just the same as usual, then you could blame it to my poor presentation skills. But in any case, Mission 119. This was an interesting mission. It didn't start out the way I expected it to. But it ends up being kind of what I hoped for. This was a very interesting mission in that it showed kind of the trolling nature of Tatsuya Endo, but at the same time, it did show his ability to be able to give depth to the characters that he wanted to focus on. So in any case, the chapter starts off with Hemlock finally making it back to Garden and running into the shopkeeper. And what's interesting is that we get a little bit more, just a little bit more insight into the shopkeeper. And we find out that he's a pretty decent guy. He has some compassion for people. And because Hemlock is in such a mental anguish at this time, it's shopkeeper who says, don't torture yourself with regards to the situation. It is true that you made problems with the mission, but you have reason for having issues with the Thorn Princess. And shopkeeper mentioned that he also had some worries with regards to her becoming domesticated. And we recall how he tried to kill her in the past just to test her to see if her skills still existed. And it's at this point that we do understand a little bit more about his viewpoints with regards to his position and the responsibilities of the people underneath him. He feels that Garden is the protector of the nation, and as such, the team has to be in absolute tip-top condition to be able to perform their missions successfully. And if anybody starts going down with regards to their skills due to any reason, then as much as he may have sympathy for that person, he cannot let that person go. Which is why we kind of feel this kind of conflicting sort of personality coming out. He seems to be a fairly decent person in many ways, and you can see that here as he tries to support Hemlock. And we've often seen this side of him in the past, but at the same time, we also have seen this really cold ruthlessness that comes out from him. And you understand why from this situation. He cares for his people very much and will support them as much as he can. But if there is ever a situation that there is problems with regards to that person becoming a liability to the team, then he will have no choice but to cold-heartedly destroy that person just for the sake of the team. And this is best shown here in his explanation of how he views his people and Garden. And before we can have any more thoughts with regards to this, Gimpy shows up and hands Hemlock some medicine for Yor. And Gimpy tells Hemlock that he has to deliver it to Yor, and Hemlock is of course already upset, and he's like, why do I have to be the one that delivers it to Yor? And for once we see this kind of eerie looking kind of angry Gimpy, and even Hemlock is a little bit upset, going, why are you angry at me? And we find out that Gimpy kind of looked up to Yor, not because she is the great assassin that she is, but because she now has a lover, which is something that Gimpy always wanted. And so Yor became this kind of personification of hope for Gimpy. And with Hemlock kind of putting a wrench into that situation, you can understand why Gimpy is upset. But then Gimpy continues on, well, we all understand the situation. You were also jealous of Yor, and so I could understand what you did. Hemlock is like, I am not jealous of Yor. And in any case, he accepts Gimpy's medicine and tells her that he will go deliver it to Yor. And as he leaves, the shopkeeper's like, I guess we'll have to rely on Mr. McMahon for a while, referring to Matthew, because you guys are not yet at a point to be able to take full responsibility of your actions. And with that, we cut back to Yor. And if you recall, in the end of chapter 118, Yor was about to confide with Lloyd. And the way she was saying that she can't take it anymore, I got the impression that she was about to have a really deep conversation with regards to how she feels from the bottom of her heart. But now that we see chapter 119, this turns out to be yet another troll by Tatsuya Endo, in that when she said it's become unbearable, she was talking about the pain from the injuries that she received from hemlock. And so why does she want to talk with Lloyd? It had nothing to do with her heart. It had to do with, hey, let's go to that bar again where we had some drinks before. And the reason for that is, if you recall, in one of the earlier missions, I can't remember if it was a short mission or if it was a standard mission, Yor got shot in the butt and just happened to go out on a date with Lloyd, because Lloyd thought that Yor was really angry with him due to her expression, which of course came from her being shot in the butt, right? And during that time, there was a bunch of people who wanted to kill Yor, and they poisoned her drink. And that poison in the drink actually made her feel better because she was so poison tolerant. And so now, with her injuries from hemlock, she wanted to go there again to see if she could have that drink once more. And Lloyd is like, whoa, why this sudden need to actually go to that bar? And the only thing Yor could say is, we need to practice our public display of affection. And Lloyd is like, really? And Yor is trying to explain the situation, but Lloyd actually luckily thinks that that's a good idea. And maybe Yor is getting into wanting to improve their image to the public. And so Lloyd turns it into a date, which is not what Yor expected. And so now Yor is having this weird feeling of, I need to get some drinks into me so that I will feel better, versus, oh my God, we're on a date again. Which makes you realize just how, innocent Yor is with regards to those sorts of situations, although she is a cold-hearted killer under certain circumstances. And of course, Anya sees her off, and Frankie's like, hey, you want to follow them again? And this time Anya's like, nah, this is getting boring. And so Lloyd, thinking that this is a good way to practice on their display of affection, he suggests that maybe they should go look at the shopping plaza along the riverfront first. And Yor is like, nah, we're going straight to the restaurant, right? And so Lloyd is like, hey, what's going on with Yor? And when he looks at Yor, she's in that foul mood, like, and then so Lloyd is like, is she angry about something again? Is there something getting between us in our relationship once more? And so over the next little while, when they're in the restaurant, you can see Yor taking a tremendous number of drinks. But of course, she's not feeling that relief from the pain anymore, because none of these drinks contain the poison that was put in by those people who wanted to kill Yor, right? And so she's taking more and more drinks, trying to relieve herself from the pain, and the only thing it's doing is getting her drunk. And so they decide to go elsewhere and see if other drinks might make her feel better. And of course, they run into some neighbors of theirs. And Yor, being drunk, asks them, when your husband comes home, do you give them welcome home kisses? And so the neighbors are like, what are you asking? And even Lloyd is asking that question. Yor is like, Lloyd, are you saying that you don't even care about stuff like this? And the stuff like this that she's talking about is the extreme pain from Hemlock's wounds. And of course, Lloyd is thinking that she's talking about their relationship, so he's like, no, that's not the point, you know. So in any case, Yor, realizing that she has to reapply new bandages to her wounds, says that she has to go to the bathroom, which of course makes Lloyd even more worried. And it's at that point that Yorm meets with Hemlock. So Hemlock was looking for a situation where he can hand off the medicine to Yor. And at that point, due to circumstances, we find out that a distance away, all of Yor's co-workers are having a day out. And they notice Yor with this mysterious, hot-looking dude, right? And they're starting to make unusual thoughts with regards to the relationships that she is having. And so curiosity gets the best of them, and they decide to follow Yor and see what's going on. Now, in the meantime, of course, Hemlock gives Yor the medicine, which looks like Hemlock is giving Yor a gift. And with that done, he just leaves. And being an isolationist, he just doesn't like being around people. And of course, with the medicine, Yor instantly feels much better. And when he comes back to Lloyd, Lloyd is like, oh my gosh, Yor is being cheerful once again. And so as they continue to walk down the road, he realizes that they are being followed by Yor's co-workers, which he tells Yor, and because Yor was drunk, she didn't notice. And she's surprised, and when she looks back, Camila and the other co-workers kind of hide, wondering if they were found, you know? And so since they want to show their public display of affection, they decide to go walking with their hands together. And of course, Lloyd is completely thinking about how to improve their image for the mission. And Yor is just freaking out because they're holding hands, right? And you see this intense look on Yor's face because she's not used to holding hands affectionately with Lloyd. And because of that, she has that frustrated look once again. And Lloyd is like, why is she looking angry once more? Is there something that we did? But in any case, because they're being followed and Lloyd doesn't want that, they ditch her co-workers. And once they got rid of them, they're able to talk more openly. And this is where we finally come to the point where we expected this chapter to start, right? This entire first part of the chapter was Tatsuya Endo trolling us about us expecting this deep-hearted discussion between the two of them, only to find out that it was about her wounds. But finally, with the wounds being healed, Yor can now focus back on her feelings. And of course, the doubt that comes out with regards to whether she should have a relationship with Lloyd, considering the position that she's in. And she, of course, remembers the comments that Hemlock said. And so Lloyd, wondering what Yor is worried about, takes her to the scenic area that they went to during Chapter 3, or Mission 3, right? And Yor thought to herself she used to come here enjoying the scenery, but she hasn't been doing so because she's become busier. But then she corrects herself and says, no, that's not the reason she stopped coming. She used to come here to get reassurance that what she was doing and what she was fighting for was correct. But with the relationship that she had with the family and Lloyd right now, she realized that she didn't need to come here for reassurance anymore. And that made her realize even more just how much she has gained over these many chapters. And so she asks a very interesting question, which is about their marriage and how much longer Lloyd thinks it can continue. And of course, this shocks Lloyd into making him think, why is she asking that question, right? Does she want to end this relationship? And then you see this entire Lloyd-like essay coming out inside his head. And if you want to go read it, you should. But it goes all basically about Operation Strix. And I'll go over why this is quite interesting a little bit later. But Yor continues. The reason she's asking this question is because there will be some point when Anya will graduate, and whatever situation we're in will no longer need to exist. And at that point, our agreement is expected to end, and we're expected to move on. But for her, and you only see it from her thoughts, she wants it to continue on forever. Which of course indicates that she is talking from the bottom of her heart. And of course, we see Lloyd's interpretation of that, which comes completely back to the current mission. And he thinks that she's talking about the benefits that this relation has for any mission, the current one or in the future. And so he answers with probably the worst answer that he could give, which is, yeah, I think Anya would be happy about that as well. But of course, that's not the answer that Yor was hoping for. And so she continues, and what about you, Lloyd? And of course, he comes back with the very canned response of, yeah, I would be grateful for that as well. And you could immediately see that Yor was not satisfied with such a scripted answer. And you could tell from Yor that what she wants is how Lloyd actually feels from the bottom of his heart. But then she remembers the comments that Matthew made about how he hoped that his situation with his wife would be a positive one to survive any situation that came up due to his work. But for her to be able to make the same hope, would that be selfish of her? And the chapter ends with her deep thoughts, right? And so this turns out to be exactly the discussion that we expected at the end of chapter 118, where we're hearing basically Yor speaking from the bottom of her heart. But there were some surprises with regards to how chapter 119 went. One was because, the first part of the chapter was nothing to do with their relationship and everything to do with absolute comedy. But even when we got to this point, there's a realization that you get. And when you look at the earlier chapters, this becomes very clear, which is that as much as Yor is getting more into the relationship with Lloyd, and though there were some extremely heartfelt moments that you saw between these two, indicating that there was a strengthening of feelings, what you find out is that from Lloyd's perspective, this has always been about the mission. And as much as those heartfelt comments were there, they were there because he needed to continue the facade with regards to their close relationship to ensure the success of Operation Strix. Yes, he did talk from the bottom of his heart with regards to certain points about his childhood and about the need for wanting a family and how that reflected with the family that he had at this time. But throughout this entire time, we do see that with regards to his relationship with Yor, this was with regards to the mission, and we don't really get anything with regards to how he feels about her. And throughout this entire time, you see Lloyd mostly thinking that Yor understands that this is just a mission, and so that they're going together and trying to make a very close family for that purpose. However, whenever there is a situation where Lloyd is confronted with her feelings, such as the time Yuri challenged them to kiss, Lloyd always switched on his replies based upon what he felt he needed due to his training and the requirements of Operation Strix. But at this point, Yor is really needing what Lloyd feels from his heart. And what's worrisome is that there may not be a proper answer at this time that Yor will be happy to hear. The honest answer that he may give, if it's from the bottom of his heart, may be, I don't feel as much of this relationship as you do, because this is all about the mission. However, we do know that from his backstory and the comparison of how he was left alone when he was young versus how he has a family now, he does cherish this family. But whether that can overcome his cold spy demeanor and his need to have Operation Strix succeed, that is hard to tell. And at this point, if he were to weigh both sides, his relationship with Yor versus his need to make Operation Strix succeed, and if there was any conflict between those two, which one would he choose? We do not know. And from everything we hear, it almost sounds like he would choose the mission over her. But this may be an error in my part, or that this may change in the future. And of course, our expectation is that it will change in the future. And this is why Tatsuya Endo is bringing this point up right now. But it is interesting to see how this will go. Right now, Yor is not satisfied with the answer that Lloyd gave. But at this point, you could see that Yor is coping with the answer that Lloyd gave. And she's making a conclusion that maybe this is all that there is, and maybe she should have to accept things for what they are. So it will be interesting. I don't know if this particular part of the story will continue in Mission 120. It almost feels like it could end at this point, but there may be a change in Yor's demeanor in the future because she has accepted that this relationship may not work. And if that happens, then you know that Tatsuya Endo brought this particular position up because he wants to write about situations that may put these two as a couple into a situation that tests their feelings for each other. But that may not be in the next chapter. That may be quite a bit away. And we will have to find out what will happen in chapter 120. And once that comes out, I'll bring out another video. Hope you join me at that time. But this is the chapter 119 discussion of Spy Family. If you read it, what'd you think about it? Any comments will be greatly appreciated. And until the next episode, happy manga reading. And as always, Jaya, nice day, everyone.